goodness. All right.
All right.
So it's me and you, Doc. Well, so
Thank
let me
you.
know when you're ready. And again, thanks so
I
much
am
for your
ready.
willingness
Yeah.
to be a part of our podcast. I appreciate it. And thanks for your time to review your work and be willing to share it with us and hopefully, prayerfully, millions of out of school time professionals all
Yes.
around the world.
Yes, that
And
would be
so,
wonderful, isn't it? I can't think of a more important thing to talk about right now than how we can support our children, not only in the school time, but of course, we still have out of school time. It's very different these days, isn't it? To
oh
deal
my
with and
goodness.
help.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, all
Mhm.
right. Well, thank you, Dr. J, again for your willingness to speak to us today about your wonderful work that you did a few years ago about how the out of school time community and the business community could work together for the good of the kids. But before we get going in the purpose of your research and all that good stuff, if you'd be so kind, can you please share a little bit about your background, your education, and your professional, what you're doing right now, and all that good stuff?
Sure. Great, Everett. Thank you so much. So, as you mentioned, I did do this study in 2014, but I am a public administration specialist. I have a PhD from New York University Wagner School, and actually have had quite a varied career as both a development specialist looking at local government issues and abroad in developing countries, but also um, am an education research specialist here in the state of Texas. And so this study in particular, I was commissioned by the Texas Education Grantmakers Advocacy Consortium to do a series of studies over the years looking at various dimensions of supporting our children and students. But I have had concurrent appointments at the University of Texas and Texas A&M's, the Bush School, and the University of Texas LBJ School, which is very unusual. But I come from a house divided, and my work has been in a house divided. But most recently, and actually as part of my inspiration to really help a range of educational issues, I've actually moved over to the Handel Group, which is a global life and executive coaching company that actually I'm the director of programming for the education division, and actually building out all kinds of innovative programming to help support the kindergarten through 12th and higher ed students. So you can see there's a direct correlation to the out of school time challenges and how to help bring programming.
Oh, oh, most
Yeah.
definitely. As you know, social emotional health is important, and it's on everybody's radar screen now. And so we'll make sure that we connect our listeners to your work,
Great.
and they'll be able to click the links below or in the podcast and learn a lot more. And I'm looking forward to
Well,
working
thank
with
you.
you on this as well as you guys continue to grow this field and this area of knowledge for all of us,
Yes.
especially for our kids that are coming from underserved communities in urban areas.
Absolutely. Yes,
All
yes,
right.
and I really appreciate where you're coming from with your podcast and your attention to our underserved communities. Because one thing that may not be as apparent in my study of corporations across the state of Texas is the I wish that it was more elevated, but the need to really think about a larger diversity of programming for a larger group of humans. I think we're in a time now that we could all revisit all of our research and make sure that we really are expanding our scopes appropriately. So thank you for your leadership in this.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. So I'm curious. So how did all this begin? Like, how did they like do a Google search and say, we want Dr. J to just research OST and corporations? How did it all begin?
Well, it's interesting. Jennifer Esterline is the executive director of the Texas Education Grantmakers Advocacy Consortium, and they are a group of the largest, educational community and family foundations across the state of Texas. That's expanded greatly since even this time, that realized that there were many foundations and philanthropists that were promoting lots of educational programming and putting significant resources in to try innovative approaches, and often that they weren't seeing the traction and the scalability And so they really wanted to begin to do more research and have more evidence-based data to also try to connect the dots back into the legislative cycle and ensure that some of the knowledge that they were gaining from the philanthropic and research approaches were actually making it to the legislative decision makers. And so this is a really interesting and unique collaboration that's actually had a lot of national attention as a way to really create some collective action and understanding and resonance around issues like this that are so important, but often, are siloed or falling through the cracks. So it's been a beautiful effort. And they came to me. I think, if I remember correctly, Jennifer was a LBJ alumni, and she knew of me and my work, and so they were looking for someone who was a generalist that could do this kind of work of looking at both public and private sector, approaches to an educational issue. So that's a little bit of an interesting niche. So they knew I was someone who could put that together as a qualitative researcher. And a little bit of building and flying the plane at the same time, because no one had really studied this back then. I mean, I can remember that we were just like, what is this? Is this after school? Is it out of school? What do we call this unique space? And that was, 7 years ago. We were still trying to even articulate what the needs were, which is incredible. As a single mother myself, very dependent on aftercare programming, it's been amazing to see the explosion of after school programming. And of course now we're speaking during the time of COVID, and there's deep concerns about the continuity of programming and how those will be funded. But it really has evolved into a rich space of programming. But again, as your podcast is highlighting, there's still great challenges in terms of ensuring that kind of programming and the innovative kinds of content are making it to all students in a way that is appropriate for a diverse range of communities.
All right.
That was a long answer to your question.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, again, thank you so much for your willingness to talk to us. And I know it's been a while since you've done your research, but can you share with us some of the key findings of your study?
Yeah, sure. And what I'd like to do is just share a screen with you that is from my study. And give me 1 second, because I did not do this correctly. 1 second. Let me get back to my slideshow. Okay. So what I wanted to show you, are you able to see that?
Not yet.
Hang on. Here we go. We have to. Come on. Okay. Here we go. I think I have to do it this direction. Okay, and now I'm going to put on the slide.
There we go.
From the current slide. There you go. I just wanted to show you that what the incentive for this work was that we found back in this research was conducted in 2014, was that what we found was that there were 4 areas that were really unclear. And some of this, again, it feels quite anachronistic, I guess would be the word now that we're looking at it, but in some ways not. And one of those, which doesn't change and is actually incredibly amplified right now during the COVID space, is logistics challenges for individual employees. And one of the areas that has been extremely difficult is continuity of care, ensuring that your children can get to the after school kinds of programs. That's transportation needs, affordability. Often a lot of programs are full, there's not enough access. And also you would hear stories about parents running back and forth from work and moving kids around, etc., or situations where children were being moved by less than admirable ways of getting kids moved around, or having to walk by themselves, etc. So lots of issues like that. And then of course for employers, in the corporate space in particular, it's really about how to ensure productivity, as always, and a lot of lack of understanding at that time of how parents navigating their childcare issues after the formal school day, how much that was actually influencing individual productivity. But at the same time, you found that a lot of the corporations that we were talking to actually were very concerned about also not appearing to be overly favoring of a parent, with children or working parents versus those without. So there was a lot of interesting learnings in this study about various kinds of benefits and how that was presented into the workspace and how it did created some tensions and created some positives. And then the last area that was really unclear was around how to create incentives that would help motivate business. So, and that I think of all the areas of the research that I conducted, it was probably the hardest to figure out ways to incentivize some of this work. But I'll stop there. But I just wanted to mention that those were some of the knowledge gaps that really informed this research. And then I'm going to just move over to a quick sampling frame just to show, that when we did this, the study looked at a number of different kinds of companies, and you can see here on the slide that we went to everything from technology to energy to grocery chains, the financial banking industry, restaurant, retail, and various service industries, trying to make sure that we were getting a wide swath. This was qualitative research. It did have a survey attached, but we were trying to create, a representative sample. And then as well, we were making sure that we weren't only looking at corporations that were located in urban, established, sort of out of school time spaces where you had more kinds of programming, but also rural and high need areas. And we made sure that we weren't just speaking to salaried and mid to high income representatives, because a lot of the people we were talking to were executives and HR directors, but we also worked to ensure that we could talk to hourly and low income workers. And that was, of course, very elucidating in terms of how they perceived the challenges. Very, very different. Yes. And then again, we looked at different companies that either felt that they were proactive and had a set of programming in terms of out of school time supports for their employees or not. So okay. Again, I'm giving you a lot of information, but what I wanted to share with you was that you asked me what some of the findings were. And again, these are now, a little bit dated, 2013-14, but I do think it sets up a good context for us to continue this conversation, which is that, back into the 2013 American Community Survey shows that, 67% of employed Texans with children between the ages of 6 and 17 are in households where all parents are in the labor force, right? And so I think that some of this is a little bit of myth busting, that we still have a lot of people at home creating the kinds of supports that younger children need. As well, another major finding that came out of the study, the two findings, is that companies really did not have much of a sense of what out of school time programming exists in the community, and also feel that they don't have the time or resources, or it is their responsibility. And I think that in terms of the current moment, I think that we really need to revisit who is responsible and how we work collaboratively as communities to re-engage, particularly out of school time programming that may be, on the verge of not being able to continue in the current space. And then also I'm going to skip a couple of these, but because that maybe aren't as relevant to our conversation. But one thing that was of interest, just to summarize a couple of these I'm skipping over, is that companies also would do what I call feel-good events. So you might have a tech company doing a 1-week summer camp, or a bring your kid to work day, or maybe doing a spring break week, but it really wasn't creating the continuity that working parents need, that was to create a continuity throughout the entire year. And so I was especially well placed as a parent with young children at the time to think I could never participate in some of these programs because I have to pay for full-time daycare so I can come to work. But again, appreciating the efforts that corporations have put in. But again, there was a real discrepancy in a sense that they, the people that were leading those initiatives, great innovators and advocates of out of school time, but that they were really doing the best they could, but without really a great breadth of information, which the study is quite comprehensive. It was trying to look at all the different kinds of possibilities at that moment. And then I just wanted to say that challenge 7, 8, and 9 really are more reflective of our current space, and I think we need to really revisit, which is I'm laughing because at this moment in life, it's like working families have a complex set of variables to work with to craft individual solutions to their childcare. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but it was needed to be stated. Like, it's not simple. It's not a one size fits all kind of an answer. And of course, right now, I saw a statistic the other day. I think that it was said something like 60% of working mothers have had to either drop out of the labor force or lose hours, or recrafting how they go to work. I mean, it has incredible consequences on economic development, the role of women in the workforce, et as we are navigating a really complex set of variables, right, with no sort of end point. And then as well, I think that, again, the crisis has created an absolute necessity for flex time work policies and remote working solutions, of course. And I think in some ways, this might be the silver lining of the pandemic and the quarantining periods, because I think we've just had to, corporations have had to really get involved, and leaders and managers and corporations have had to really get engaged with the realities of working parents in a way that might not have ever happened. And then again, the sick children, school holidays were something that were really obvious in the work, in terms of having care for sick children, and of course, being able to hire like a nurse or have a child in some kind of a sick care facility, which is of course an immediate and unexpected need, is really out of the financial possibilities of most working parents. And so that was something, again, that some corporations have created benefits for sick children and created camps, et cetera, for school holidays. But of course, now this takes on a whole new level, right? And I would just say that then now the concern is also like mitigating parent stress who are staying home with sick children, but also trying to, continue to have continuity at work for fear of loss of jobs if they can't, show up in the way that they perceive they need to show up. So I've said a lot there. And of course, better tracking data is always needed, but those were some of the key findings that, again, remain essential to think about right now. Yes.
Oh, yes. You talk about your work being relevant in 2020. Well, it most definitely is. For challenges, I believe it was 7, 8, 9.
Right.
I mean, we're right in the midst of that, and it'll be interesting to hear and see what corporations are going to do to help their employees with childcare and out-of-school time care as well. In your research, you talked about some opportunities that some organizations were, providing it on site, and if they were creating it themselves, or they were partnering with a vendor, an outside provider, to provide it for the employees. Do you think that is relevant now? Do you think in the age of COVID that may be an opportunity, or what?
Well, what I think that is that for those providers that are really able to think outside of the box, and those corporations that are really stepping up in terms of trying to help support the whole community, I think that's really where we have the most opportunities for new ways of collaboration that I think could really lead to some effective solutions right now. I think that we have such incredible challenges, even just anecdotally in my children's school. There's a number of out-of-school providers that are used to using the school, facilities, whether it's a basketball court or a gym, that can't even use the spaces. We're talking about extensive expenses involved in developing online programming, training your your workers to do basic safety measurements, as well as all the technology. I mean, I just don't, I think that there's so many expenses right now that the layperson may not even realize are part of this complex equation, where I think that companies could really be potentially stepping in, like if they already have some of these resources to share, or partner with struggling after school programmers to help sustain. Because my biggest fear, and again anecdotally or as a parent, is so many of these programs will not make it, and then we are going to be really at ground zero in some ways with the out of school time um, needs at the end of the pandemic. So very challenging situation.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now, did you work with the state any in this research, the TEA, or just
Mhm.
corporations?
Mainly, this was focused on corporations, but we did look, for instance, at ways that we could work with the Texas. Looked at some ways to incentivize corporations, and one of the pieces that we looked at was actually creating some ways that we could provide awards or
Incentives?
one second, hang on 1 second. 1 second.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll be there soon. Thank you. And
No problem.
so
Then don't forget, Doc,
I
we
know we
can
can
pause
edit.
any
It's
moment.
okay. No, we're okay. So yeah, I'll be out as soon as I can. Thanks. And so speaking of out of school time, we are in the no school time right now. It's not summer, it's not fall, and I've got an 8-year-old that we're
Aw,
learning by doing. So
yeah. What
that's
grade is
part of the
that?
deal. Is that
Third or
she's in
fourth?
third grade. She's
Third?
going into third. Yes,
Okay.
and and it's really interesting also just to say, just to interrupt here, but the out of school time programming often brings so much of the social connectivity and the social emotional learning and things like additional STEM and additional physical activity that I've really experienced a personal loss there in terms of having to be all things to my children right now, when those were things I was able to distribute out, during their day to some really exceptional out of school care providers. But what I wanted to getting back to the Texas Workforce Commission idea was that we had looked at ways to incentivize, to really honor and amplify the work of those corporations that were really stepping up to create some incentives. And I don't think that was able to move forward, but I do think it's something worth thinking about further. And I think also the other major piece here is figuring out ways to coordinate information dissemination, evaluation, stakeholder networks. And I know that we've got the Texas Texas partnership for out of school time, which was just a nascent organization back when I was doing this work, has really evolved. And we have some national programs that are able to really do some of that connecting. But from the state level, I know that we could create even more opportunities to support our private sector, whether it's through tax credits or providing this kind of honoring. And I think there's also a number of grant programs and training and technical assistance and program evaluation supports that could be done in partnership with state agencies.
Well, so when it's time to testify before the state legislature in January, we'll call you so that you can
I sure
share
hope that
all these wonderful incentives.
yes,
Because,
yes.
I mean, the reality is we're going to need everyone's help to pull us out of this COVID situation for a lot of our kids.
Yeah.
And parents have to go back to work. I'm interested to see what, you mentioned that a lot of corporations thought they were being proactive by basically having, bring your kid to work days or something like that.
Mhm.
But just trying to think about what it would look like post COVID and
Yeah.
how the business community, we all know, is looking for talent, a talent pipeline, and how they can invest in some out of school time programs as a partner with some schools to hopefully, maybe prayerfully, produce some future employees.
And it's interesting because I had done some different research actually for TCAC as well, that was around guided pathways and the work of connecting students from middle school to high school on into higher ed, and thinking about what those pathways look like with the House Bill 5 legislation. And I actually did quite a bit of research looking at a number of employers that are really part of this out of school time contribution, in the sense that I don't have those names right in front of me, but there are some organizations that recognize, if you are going to have particularly minority and disadvantaged youth moving into talent pipelines in college, you better make sure that not only do they have people in front of them that look like them, and that have experiences and can communicate and translate their own life experiences in a way that makes sense for younger students, so that they can actually have the dream and actually provide um, a pathway in the mentorship, right? And so they have some ways where if students are doing some of those going to work, kinds of activities, and eventually they can be hired on as summer interns, and then eventually actually have guaranteed employment if they go on to college. So there's lots of neat incentives and innovations that are possible in this space, but it does really take a lot of stepping up, I think, from corporations to take this on as corporate social responsibility, especially in this
Yes,
current
corporate
period.
social responsibility. That's the next
Yes.
paper or the next study.
Right. Yeah, I would love to redo this study in 2020. It'd be fascinating to see,
Mm,
be able to take a snapshot of how organizations are um, able to fill in some of these gaps, and really what the collective learnings are. Because I do think, um, people are talking about, quote, the new abnormal as opposed to the return to normal, right? Like this is likely the effects of this shock on how we will return to work, how people are able to navigate, negotiate, being able to work remotely. I think there are some positives, right? But I think for the vast majority of working parents, the childcare situation is, regardless of how we negotiate these changes, it will still be a hugely important part of how we're able to have healthy families, healthy communities, and really navigate this with this least amount of stress as possible for the families and, of course, the children.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, Doc, I know we're winding up, but I wanted to hit a little bit more about what you're doing right now, because out of school time facilities and providers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the space we live in and we know well is social emotional development. Because at the end of the day, kids come and they talk to us, and we appreciate that. And also, they're really excited and have a lot of energy when they get to us. So we're always trying to help them to self-regulate and manage their
Mm-hmm.
emotions and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm sure a lot of our
Yeah.
listeners would like to hear more about the resources that you and your team are developing.
Thank
So
you.
can you share a little
Yeah.
bit more about that?
I would, and it really is a huge passion project for me. And what, the Handel Group is a life and executive coaching company, as I had mentioned, but we have a profound and deep social mission to really impact how our children are educated. And we really don't do what we call it humaning, like as a verb, like better humaning is a verb. Like we do focus so much on obviously the core math and STEM and a reading and all these kinds of indicators, and we are doing more in the social emotional learning space. But often we don't extend as much attention to helping students to dream, and how to help students, and now more than ever, right, how to help students really dream in all areas of life. And there are a lot of children in the world that have never been asked to dream, or in family ecosystems where there haven't been a lot of dreams, and people just struggle to get by. And so one of the things that we were inspired to do at the Handel Group is to actually take our coaching model. We're actually moving it into classrooms as classroom programming, but also in this current period, we realized that there are a lot of parents in need of after school programming and do need to remain quarantined. So we created a Design Your Life for Kids program, which is a once a week interactive coaching group where we're going to be breaking kids into kindergarten to second, third to fifth, and sixth through eighth grade cohorts, and making it really fun. We recognize kids are going to be online all morning long, but this is actually an opportunity where the kids will learn how to dream. We'll really, we talk about learning metacognition, which is a big fancy term for, really beginning to investigate our own thinking, looking at the voices in our head, kind of how various dialogues and theories and beliefs might be running our show, and even at a very young age, a lot of negative thinking gets in there. We also talk about personal integrity, which is about how children can really begin to align their current actions with these dreams and kind of figure out ways in which they are, get in their own way of their own dreams, which is the kind of work we do with adults. We do it in very age appropriate ways, lots of drawings and lots of fun storytelling and reading excerpts and things that really keep the kids really engaged. But then really at the base of it, we're really trying to build significant emotional resilience, right, in this time of great uncertainty and challenge, and really help students to keep getting their head kind of under new management and conquering negative beliefs and theories that it's very easy to what we would call weather report. It's like this, the pandemic is a time where it's like the weather, like there's nothing we can do about it, and this is as good as it gets. But we can also teach these children what we would call it more of an empowered authorship role in their life, and really begin to even children coming from very difficult circumstances and trauma, and that's something we haven't even talked about on this podcast, but the traumas experienced around this experience of the quarantining, that they can still find a degree of empowerment and authorship in their lives. So we're working to do that through self-exploration and expression to really help build some of that self-awareness, and have the students in the semester really forward-looking and trying to stay connected to dreams that will help continue to pull them and hopefully their families, their parents, in discussions through this experience. So that's what we're up to, and I think these kinds of more advanced social emotional learning experiences and blending them with other after-school programming is a really nice way to help create some of that deeper, self-reflection, self-awareness skills.
Yes, well, that emotional resiliency, as you mentioned, is going to be needed more than ever. A lot of our children already suffer from PTSD from some of the environments that they live in, and now that anxiety is sometimes contagious.
Yes.
When your parents are out of work and uncertain about the future, sometimes those emotions get transferred to the children,
Yes.
and then they go to school normally and they would act out, or too many wiggles, and that behavior will come to the after school program. And so this information that you're sharing and the resources you're providing are most definitely necessary. So are you primarily in the schools right now only, or how would an out of school time provider get connected with your work?
Well, they would find me at Hendel Group. It's jenny@hendelgroup.com. And we really work to design very specified, customized programming for the communities that we're working with. In this particular instance, this is a product offering that we've created in response to the pandemic. We will be running them in the fall. We're hoping to also do a second set in the spring that would be an extension of this work. We're, of course, building and flying the plane like many people and making sure that it works well for the students. But this is based on classroom programming, where we have already piloted a round of this and evolved what is our general coaching curriculum for all ages into age appropriate kinds of content and activities. So we have taught in a number of K through 8 schools, and most notably in the New York City public school system. And so we have the models ready for both classroom and for after school programming. But one of the reasons that we've evolved this into after school programming is to be able to connect directly with parents, because one thing we're recognizing both in K through 12 and higher ed, we work in both spaces, is that with the unbelievably massive budget cuts and everyone in the education ecosystem just trying to hold it together, right, and like literally day by day decisions, a lot of this kind of programming is not even able to be considered, and certainly not paid for inside of public school budgets. So we have made this available so that parents can have access to this kind of innovative programming. And I think that's something that really needs to be mentioned in terms of after school programming, and we've known this, but I don't think it's said enough, is that after school providers can often provide some of the kinds of content and quality of programming that our public school systems just may not be able to provide, that can be a real stopgap for our families. And again, like
Absolutely.
you're saying, right? Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. So when it's time to testify again at our state about the value of out of school time and how we indeed can be are the bridge between the family and schools often,
Absolutely.
we are able to supplement and
Hmm.
reinforce what's happening during the school day,
Hmm.
and
And I'd
hopefully
say amplify. Don't don't
and
don't
amplify.
underestimate.
Yes, yes, let's
Amplify.
put that in there as well.
Exactly. Because I mean, as a personal, as an individual parent, I can really look back now with children in third and fifth grade. There have been some exceptional out of school time providers that have really been our lifeline as a family and really provided the nurturing and connectivity that my children needed in the afternoon so that I could work, as a single parent. So we can't underestimate the value of these out of school time providers. And I just hope that at the end of this pandemic that we have helped to bring these out of school time providers, especially those like the great work you're doing with Voice of Hope, that the funding and the support keeps it available for the students that are most in need right now. So I really
Yes,
appreciate what
yes.
you're doing.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Doc. And again, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate
Mm-hmm.
it. Now, we're going to put a link to your work
Thank you.
currently in
Mm-hmm.
the podcast link. And we're also going to put a link to your study as well
Great.
so that folks can read that. Would your
Okay.
PowerPoints be available as well?
Sure, absolutely. I can send those over to you from the original presentations we did at the state legislature here in Texas and also some other stakeholders. So for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Great.
Well, Doc, again, I appreciate your time. And we want to
Mm.
let you get back to a little Miss 8-year-old who's probably needs some help with the
Needs some
homework.
breakfast. I'm sure she needs
Oh,
some
okay,
breakfast and
okay,
somebody to help
okay.
support her worksheets.
Yes,
Yeah, no, for
because
sure.
everybody's on Zoom right now doing
Yeah.
schoolwork, so she probably needs some
Uh,
help how to get on
well, and
Zoom.
it's unbelievable. Yeah, watching our children's maturation over the last 7, 8 months, that they certainly are strengthening and their ability to care for themselves and these life skills that we talk about as being so important. They're figuring it out.
Yes, they
They
are.
are
Yes, they
figuring it
are.
out.
Yes, they are. It's a whole
Hopefully
new
in the right
world.
way. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you so
right.
much for your time. I appreciate you reaching out to me. This is a special time to get to reconnect on these issues that are so important.
Well, thank you again.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Eric, you can cut that and edit it and make it all look pretty. So we have a great editor, and
Great.
and so, like I said, Doc, we'll edit it, and it'll be about 20, 25 minutes probably,
Great. Great.
and I'll send it to you, let you listen, watch, or whatever. Get your thumbs up, and
Great.
then we'll
Sure.
add it to the collection.
Awesome. Do you feel like we covered what you wanted covered?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We hit the big rocks, we
Mm-hmm.
highlighted the work and some of the major issues that are relevant today, especially I think challenges, how you hit challenges 7, 8, 9, or whatever it was. I mean, that's most
Yeah. Yeah.
relevant today. And I need people to be
Right.
thinking about all your employees are going to be dealing with this or are dealing with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So companies, please be thinking about that. But more importantly, out of school time providers use this information to share with corporations around you on ways that they can support the out of school time community, because we're
Yeah.
here and we're ready to serve, but we
Yeah.
need partners with some cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Of course.
there are
Yeah.
corporations with cash right now.
Have you all restarted your after school? You told me you're doing online, or what are you needing? Like, what are you doing right now, just in case I know of anybody?
So two things. One, we have on campus program, and we have our own
Mm-hmm.
facility, which is behind me.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
are not starting program on our campus as yet, but once they start in-person learning, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
be providing in-person programming.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
delay as long as
Long as
possible
possible.
before
Yeah.
we open up our main campus,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna let the schools figure all this out first.
Right. No
Or
need to be the guinea pig.
right,
Right.
because they
Yeah.
have many
So.
many more resources than I do. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
if they open up and with all the resources available to them and they're still having cases of COVID and having to shut down, well, that's
Yeah.
probably going to happen to me as well. But the
Right.
difference is, it'll take a lot longer for us to get re-engaged, re-ramped up than it will a
Yeah.
school
No,
system.
of
So,
course. Of
I'm
course.
trying to
Gosh.
delay as much as possible until things are, better, well managed, so that we can mitigate and have
Yeah.
less potential for problems.
Sure.
But
Sure.
with that
Boy.
being said, we're going to do some online virtual stuff in the STEM area,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on math.
Mm-hmm.
So we're excited about that.
Well, I really took to heart some of your perspectives on the workshop, which of course we've launched. And of course, we're in the similar space of trying to generate some revenue to keep building out some programming so we can do more, right? While we're waiting for our school systems, like, I didn't say it on the podcast, but we cannot get a school system. We've got a humanities prep, which is a public school in the state of New York that we've ongoing, and we've got a couple of charter schools, so we're not with it. We've got a couple of course private schools that are all back and work. I don't know how they're doing it, but here in Austin everyone seems to have gone back to school if they've got enough money to support it. But we're really working to ensure revenue stream right now so that we can continue to have programming evolving and building out. So because I told you our dream is to build this platform, right, that'll be the inner youth, as we will be calling it, and we're looking for funders, right, to help support that. But what I was going to say is that I would love to offer some openings to your children if you have some students that would be interested to be part of the design lab. But I am concerned, Edward, that this is not well structured for your community, right, your stakeholders. And I think that I would love to continue. And if you even wanted to observe, or there's ways, we'll be recording everything. We'd love to think about ways that we could partner to evolve this into the right kind of programming. And we will be doing another teacher training cohort. We are teaching this curriculum for free to teachers, and of course your after school providers, yourself included, of course, could all have access to that free training. So we're just finishing up that cohort that started before I knew you, but we're planning on doing another one in mid-October. So I'd love to keep thinking about ways that we could co-design something that would really work, because we really
Yeah.
do have a desire to ensure that we are getting this to as broad a group of humans as possible that really do need it.
Well, as we talked about, I am 100% wanting to engage and to share and to learn together. What kind of birds are those?
Can you hear them? I was nervous. Yeah, we have. So one of our COVID things is my daughter had wanted a pet, and she wanted a chameleon and all these crazy expensive things. And we went over to the store, and I convinced her a bird was the way to go. And let me tell you, birds are not a lot of work. And anyway, we ended up with a green cheek conure, which is a very expensive bird. We had three grandparents involved, all of our Christmas and birthday savings. I mean, Mama pitched in for, we found some cheap cages. It was quite a thing, but they have been such a lovely addition. And I think I'd mentioned to you, my younger daughter is ADHD. She's been diagnosed this year, and it's been a real journey for us. And I almost would call our green cheek conure like little baby parrots, right? He's almost like a therapy bird. She's pets him and loves on him, and he's just been a beautiful addition to our. And then I got a parakeet for my older daughter, but I'll tell you, parakeets, they don't do much.
Okay, so
They're beautiful singing. The
which
one
one
you're
are we
hearing
listening?
you're hearing the conure. He's very vocal. And they speak. Turns out they don't speak for 2 years. I went, we got to wait 2 years to get into the talking. And I was like, oh, this is. And they lived until 35 years. I go, oh, this is like a real commitment. I'm gonna.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've already made sure he's going to college with the little one. I'm not. I'll keep the dog. Y'all take the birds.
That's funny. Well,
and
what
so
I was
far
going to
they're
say.
doing great. Yeah.
That's good. So, again, we have a wonderful partnership with Uplift Education, which is a charter school network here in North Texas. And again, I would be willing to have a proof of concept with some of the students that attend our program, get a little pre and post testing going on, and demonstrate the outcomes of your program, and then let Uplift decide whether they want to introduce it to their network at a large scale,
Yeah.
small scale, with a particular
Yeah. How,
demographic or whatever.
yeah. How many do you know how big the population or how many schools are involved in the Uplift network?
Yeah, I believe they have four. Let me see it real quick. I can. I believe they have
Hmm?
14 schools and 40,000 students
Uh-huh.
or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Hold on. Uplift.
Oh, it's 37.
Okay,
Yeah.
well there you
I
go.
just pulled
So
up something. 37, it's right on the 37 high performing tuition free public schools. 17,500. So
okay,
this is
there you go.
actually for they are focused on disadvantaged youth. Is that the whole?
I wouldn't say solely, but they
Mhm.
have a lot of schools in areas that are historically and traditionally underserved,
Wow, that's
and they are
fabulous.
having some phenomenal results in some schools and not so phenomenal results in
Yeah.
other schools. And so, just like anything else, they are looking for partners to provide the
Yeah.
needed instruction to help the scholars, as they call them. And so,
Yeah.
there may be an opportunity for us to
Mhm.
work together
Mhm.
because
Uh-huh.
you, as you're finding out, it's challenging to knock on a school district's door and say, hey, look at me, I got a product, because everybody does that. But if you
Yeah.
work with an already trusted and known
Oh, of
provider for
course. Of
multiple
course.
years and leverage that relationship, it may be a win-win for
It's
everybody.
huge. It is huge. I am learning in my work in the business development space because, as I told you, this is all brand new for me, right? But it's just essential that you have the trust, right? I mean, I can open doors from my own background and in my space, as an educational researcher, that just make all the difference. And even having the conversations, and what I know is that once people are engaged with our products and with our coaches, it's the easiest thing in the world because people see immediate and dramatic results in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids too. I mean, like just
Mm-hmm.
last week, my daughter participated. We did you'll see it on the social media if you're following my social media. Where we're posting actual excerpts of the kids actually, and fortunately, it's four little white girls because it's all coaches' daughters. We were trying to find someone to put on, but we were like, you know what, we're just going to go with what works right now with our own kids. We were worried about the ethics of having other people's kids on these models, and anyway, but we hope, again, I just decided we're just going to focus this marketing on what it is and then begin to continue to build out in the right way because I don't want it to be tokenist or putting someone on a camera to sell. Yeah, that's not what we're into.
Yeah.
But anyway, the four little girls, my daughter got on there, and it was unbelievable because we were working on our back to school